Darrell Brooks, Fury at Sex Offender Reveal. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. Well, Darrell Brooks, who thinks he's the world's best lawyer and completely unable to see that he's an utter moron, finds himself exhibiting yet more of the narcissistic dynamic. I explained in the introductory piece that Brooks is a narcissist. I also have informed you that he's a lesser narcissist. There are 4 subschools of lesser narcissists: lower lesser, middle lesser, upper lesser A, and upper lesser B. Very briefly, lower lessers are complete scumbags, utter losers. Invariably, they don't work, they sponge off other people, they're uneducated, they have a very low cognitive function, very low threshold on their ignited fury. They engage in repeated exhibitions of heated fury, often physical violence, verbal violence, destruction of property. They find themselves regularly in trouble with the law. Their relationships with family and friends are fractured. Their romantic relationships are problematic, to say it mildly. They are the real trailer trash scumbags, real bottom of the barrel, amoeba-like arseholes. Middle lessers are all of those things that I've just described. However, they may intermittently work. Their cognitive function may be a bit above that of the lower lesser. They may well exhibit some mid-range behaviours, namely silent treatments, sulking, storming off, having a strop. They don't operate a facade in the same way that the lower lesser doesn't either. Upper lesser A is your affable arsehole. Might be stupid, but can also be highly intelligent. Often charismatic, can also be successful, utterly superficial, in it for themselves. Isn't necessarily somebody that is outwardly nasty to anybody, but simply you can't rely upon them. The type of individual, if you were to go and say, "Oh my goodness, my wife has left me, boo-hoo, boo-hoo," he would turn around and say, "Fantastic, we can now go and watch the strippers, can't we?" No facade, doesn't care that you don't care about, or rather doesn't care about the fact that you can see that he doesn't care. Often can be quite likeable, though, but not if you get too close to them. Upper lesser type B, again, may have low cognitive function, but can have high cognitive function also. Can be charismatic, but often isn't. More belligerent, bullying, and brash, a complete show-off. Sometimes, because there is some ability there, often there isn't. Tend to be successful, usually though at a local level. You can safely say that Brooks is neither upper lesser type A because he has no charm and he's not affable in the slightest, although he is a huge arsehole, and nor is he upper lesser type B because whilst he is bullying in his behaviours, he doesn't have the success that would ordinarily be associated with an upper lesser type B. Therefore, you would be looking at either lower lesser or middle lesser. And I'll allow you to keep watching his behaviour to see what you think in terms of where he sits. But those are essentially the 2 choices. What about his cadre? Well, as you know, there's somatic, cerebral, elite, and victim. The most likely ones applicable to him would be victim or somatic. He doesn't have many brain cells, cerebral's out of the window, and there aren't sufficient even to get it into elite. So you'd be left looking at either victim or somatic. Continue to watch to see what you think in that regard. This piece of footage demonstrates more aspects of the dynamic between this lesser narcissist and those around him in the courtroom, relating to the revelation that he is a sex offender. I'm going to play you the footage and then I'll dissect it. Here comes the clip.
Without having that letter.
So
the state has the ability to question you about that, or question this witness, and to look at the veracity of what your claims are here. So, I may take an early lunch. If that's in your cell, then you can go get it and bring it. But without that letter, I'm not allowing this line of questioning. Do you have the letter with you in court?
I just said no. How many times I got to say the same thing on record?
You know, sometimes, sir, I don't hear what you say because you interrupt me so much or you answer quietly. And I'm taking notes and I'm focused on probably a dozen things at the same time.
But if I say something under my breath, everybody seems to hear it. Everybody seems to hear
that just fine. In a quiet courtroom, yes, we can hear it very clearly.
Everybody assumes that it has to be disparaging.
Once again, you're doing this tactic.
Because
it's
not a tactic. It's facts.
What we're talking
it's
about
facts.
To some other reason.
It's facts. Because I find it hard to believe that
I'm gonna
all of a sudden nobody hears what I say.
I'm going to let the state make a record of why they believe it's objectionable because I haven't let them do that. I've given you multiple opportunities to tell me why you believe it's...
I didn't get these pictures from nobody else. Why was somebody else...
The record will reflect you have 2 pictures that you believe were from this witness.
That I know is from him.
No, that you believe.
That I know.
All right. I'll ask the state their position on all of this.
My position, Your Honor, is that these pictures, first of all, should not be admissible. 1, because of a discovery violation. We've never seen them before. 2, because we have reason to believe that he did not get them from Erica Patterson. He is on a jail phone call talking to his mother, Dawn Woods, about Dawn Woods sending these photographs to him. Now,
that's a lie. I object to
that.
that.
Let the state make their argument without interruption, sir.
That's a lie, though.
3, I believe that these photographs are designed to make a suggestion to the jury that Erica Patterson is a bad mom. I think that is what the defendant is trying to do. And if we're going to go down that road, then we would be forced to counter that claim. First of all, it doesn't make her an incredible witness, if it's even true. And second of all, if we go down that road, we would be forced to counter that claim by pointing out that not only does the defendant not live with the child in question, he doesn't live with any of the other children that he has. He impregnated Erica Patterson when she was a minor in Nevada, and for doing so, he was convicted of statutory sexual seduction, pled guilty in March of 2007 to that felony offense, and is a sex offender on the registry as a result. So if there's any causation that would lead to Erica Patterson being a bad mom, Mr. Brooks has a direct role in that causation.
And that's
furthermore,
I object to that.
I'm not
because that's a lie.
Let him
at
finish.
The end of the day,
Let him finish.
If we're gonna open the door on that, no, since he want to make a record and not be accurate, so let's be accurate all on the record. Since you think you know so much.
Once
so
again,
we can
Mr.
open
Brooks
the door
is
on.
being
We can
loud,
open the door on how old she told me she was when
interrupting.
we met. We can ask that question
he is
too. Then
over the top animated
right
now.
That?
Mr. Brooks, I'm ordering you to sit down and to let the state finish.
No, I'm not going to sit here and let somebody be inaccurate on the record and lie on the record.
Right. Under Illinois versus Allen, I've warned him repeatedly. He's being removed from the courtroom. And you know what? Let me dial that back. We're just going to take an early lunch, 1 hour. We'll be back. And unless he brings that letter, and he can show it is inadmissible, she will not be questioned, and under 906.11, I will declare the cross-examination closed. Thank you, we're in recess, 1 hour.
Get your facts straight. So let's open the door on all of it then, so we can get all of it on the record. Since you think you know so much. Did you know she said she was 18 when I met her? Did you know that?
We join the footage where there's some discussion about the admission of a letter into evidence. The judge, you'll notice immediately that Brooks is engaging into his staring into the air routine again. This is a present silent treatment where his haughty dismissive behaviours are being exemplified through a sense of entitlement to essentially say to the judge, I'm listening but I'm not. I'm not paying you any attention. It's an attempt to nullify a threat to control. To my mind, the judge ought to rebuke him and demand that he look at her, but probably she's got so tired of attempting to bring him to heel that she just lets him get on with it. The judge explains, I'm not allowing this line of questioning. Do you have the letter? This is challenge fuel. It immediately irritates Brooks, threatening his sense of control, and his ignited fury starts to show. I just said no. How many times do I have to say the same thing? He announces. The judge then explains, sometimes I don't hear you because you interrupt me so much, or you answer quietly. And then she goes on to explain that she's doing various things and she has a dozen things going on. To my mind, this is a judge that over-explains, exhibiting quite a strong truth-seeker trait, that she feels a need to explain to him why she hasn't heard him. If it were me, I would just carry on. He doesn't merit being told why she doesn't always hear him, because quite simply, the man is a fool and shouldn't be indulged. Of course, then we get some of Brooks's paranoia being exhibited, where he states, "But if I say something under my breath, everybody seems to hear it. Everybody assumes it has to be disparaging." The judge then attempts to interrupt him by saying that he's trying to take matters off to one side. This is his paranoia causing him to exhibit his victimhood, so that, "Oh, you say you can't hear me, but whenever I happen to say something disparaging, you always hear me. Yahboo, sucks to be me." Furthermore, it's deflection. He then states, "It's facts. I find it hard to believe that nobody hears what I say." Poor old Darrell Brooks. The judge continues by explaining, "The record will reflect that you have two pictures you believe are from this witness." He immediately interjects, because that's challenge fuel, "that I know." The judge counters him, "No, that you believe." "No," he says, again exhibiting his defiance and the need to nullify the threat to control posed by the judge's comments. The judge then explains that she'll ask for the state's position. The state explains why they object to the introduction of the photographs, first of all explaining that it's a discovery violation, that they've never been provided beforehand. This is unsurprising, and I suspect, of course I'm not following the trial on a day-to-day basis, that this is a recurring theme with Brooks, that he introduces things that he hasn't disclosed earlier on. Why? Well, first of all, he's not a lawyer and he doesn't understand discovery. However, it's not a particularly difficult concept to get your head around. Essentially, anything that's relevant to the matters in question has to be disclosed to the other side, both good and bad, in order to allow a fair trial. With Brooks, however, he doesn't disclose it at the time because his narcissism directs him not to do so. He probably doesn't really even consider doing it because his narcissism thinks, "I will just assert control by not complying with the discovery requests." Then, when it suits him to involve something, he does so, even though he's not relied on earlier. This is a combination of his low cognitive function, not understanding how it works, but also then not realizing, well, actually, I can't introduce this, can I? Because I failed to do so earlier. Or making an application seeking permission to introduce it at a late juncture. No, he just introduces it, exhibiting his sense of entitlement, lack of boundary recognition, and absence of accountability for following the rules of procedure. So the state objects firstly on there being a discovery violation. Then they explain that they don't believe that he got them from Erica Patterson. When that's said, you hear Brooks go, "Pfft," which exhibits his contempt, as there is a threat to his control by the prosecuting attorney making that comment. He then adds, "That's a lie." The judge chastises him. "That's a lie, though," he adds again. Once again, his narcissism, in your face, obvious and apparent, causes him to keep interrupting and making these comments. I should imagine that those of you who perhaps have seen various courtroom interactions will start to think, this is all now making sense to me as to why the person that I was involved with kept interrupting, kept going on, never shut up. They were a narcissist, or I suspect they were a narcissist. They were exhibiting similar behaviours. And that's why this work is so important, particularly within the realm of litigation. Regularly, people are involved in litigation with narcissists, and, although not always, but a lot of the time, the reason that litigation commences in the first place, and continues, often unnecessarily, is because of the presence of a narcissist. This is something I've spoken about in separate videos, so I won't do so here, but it is worth mentioning. The prosecuting attorney for the state continues, explaining that if the defendant is trying to use photographs to suggest that Erica Patterson is a bad mother, then if we're going down that road, we would have to point out that not only does the defendant not live with the children in question or any of his children, he impregnated Erica Patterson when she was a minor in Nevada and was convicted of statutory sexual seduction, that he pled guilty and is a sex offender on the registry as a result. If Erica Patterson is a bad mother, then Mr. Brooks has had a direct role in that causation. The suggestion that he has caused a problem and that he is a sex offender on the registry is challenge fuel. It offends his notion of who he is, and therefore his narcissism immediately causes an explosion of ignited fury as he interrupts with, "That's a lie. See, want to make a record? Let's be accurate so we can open the door on how old she told me she was. We can ask that question. Did you know that?" The judge explains, "I'm ordering you to sit down." He defiantly responds, "No." The judge, exasperated, but taking no more shit from this buffoon, states, I've warned him repeatedly. Going to remove him from the courtroom. Actually, we'll wind that back. We're going to take an early lunch. Notwithstanding the fact that now the courtroom is clearing for an early lunch because it's no longer in session, he keeps ranting because his fury is ignited. And it needs for him to keep trying to assert control over those in the courtroom, the judge, the attorneys, the jury if they're there, other people that are in there. And he keeps going on. You even hear him say at the end, did you know she was 18 when I met her? Did you know that? Now, of course, his ranting is a representation, a manifestation of his ignited fury, which has been come to the fore for the need to nullify the threat to control posed by what the prosecuting attorney said. Also note this. Brooks pled guilty to the offence of which he was accused of statutory sexual seduction. Therefore, that means that he accepted he'd done it. But of course, he's a narcissist, and that means he doesn't. In that moment, his narcissism guided him to plead guilty because it viewed that as the best way to obtain control. It's essentially called the assertion of control through agreement. However, notwithstanding the fact that he has pled guilty to this, which is an admission of guilt, at a later juncture, his narcissism, using the narcissist conditional asterisk, of course, suggests that he wasn't actually guilty, that she was at fault, that she lied to him. Well, if that was the case, why did he not plead not guilty and take it to trial in the first instance? The reality is, of course, she didn't say this, and it's a lie that's being invented by his narcissism for the purposes of smearing her and seeking to assert control in this moment by basically saying, I'm not a sex offender, she told me she was 18, it was her fault, she misled me, and the fact that I pled guilty before, that's now irrelevant because that's in the past, we're talking about the now. So this is an excellent opportunity to understand the compartmentalization of the narcissist, whereby the narcissist pleads guilty in the past, which would suggest an admission, but then the narcissism, utilizing the narcissist conditional asterisk, which basically means this, no matter what the narcissist says or does in the moment, they're not tied to it at another juncture. It disappears up into the ether. The narcissist can do a 180 if necessary. And thereafter, when years later he's mentioned of being a sex offender which threatens his sense of control, his narcissism seeks to nullify that by basically saying, no, I'm not, she lied, and therefore I shouldn't even have that conviction, notwithstanding the fact, of course, that I pled guilty myself. You and I and everybody else can see the illogical stance that he's taking. He can't, because of a consequence of his narcissism won't let him. And he continues to rant in that moment in order to assert control. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.